Zack Snyder's complete Knightmare plan explained in detail. The DC live-action movies have intrigued fans with some delightful movies over time. Even though recently Marvel movies have been dominating the box offices, let's not forget that the first true mainstream superhero blockbusters, Superman 1978 and Batman 1989, were DC characters. These movies raised the confidence of studios to invest massively in comic book characters, and that's the reason we are seeing such an immense growth in the superhero genre. However, for DC movies, a particular high was reached when Christopher Nolan handled the Batman trilogy. After the completion of the Dark Knight series, Nolan stepped down and refused to be involved with further additions to the story. This is when Warner Brothers assigned Zack Snyder to keep up the good work. He had already worked with dark and gritty adaptations of comic books and graphic novels in the movies Watchmen and 300. This experience made him best suited to take over the mantle of leading the DC universe to compete with the success of Marvel. Snyder lived up to the expectations with the movie Man of Steel. It was a top-notch Superman movie appreciated from all quarters, and it raised the fans' hopes of the DC future in safe hands. In 2016, the movie Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice released. Once again, the movie did good business, although the reviews for this one were of varying opinions. It was also noteworthy that despite the buzz and success surrounding the two of his movies, the craze never matched that of Marvel. Even in terms of box office collections, Marvel was racing ahead with a star-studded lineup and brilliant directors to take care of proceedings. Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin. Zack Snyder's work with Justice League. Even before Batman vs. Superman had released, the script for the movie Justice League was readied by Snyder, but Batman vs. Superman did not exactly fare as the makers had expected. This prompted Zack Snyder to rework the script for Justice League. When the filming was done, it was a whopping 5 hours of assembly cut. Even the director's cut was around 3.5 hours, and it could be narrowed down to a 2-hour studio cut. His extensive plot lines were explored through this time, but somehow it could not satisfy the studio folks. They wanted some changes to be made with the work, particularly the parts that made the storyline a bit too dark for their comfort. If reports are to be believed, they also had an issue with the length of the movie and found it to be too lengthy. As Snyder was comprehending the changes that were suggested and was about to begin work with the changes, tragedy struck. His daughter committed suicide and he had to abandon the project at this stage. To avoid the stalling of the movie, Warner Brothers now roped in Joss Whedon to fit the bill. He edited the script yet again and added around 80 more pages. The producers were already harping on the importance of making the Justice League more optimistic and lighthearted. Joss Whedon's introduction helped their cause as they together omitted a substantial portion of Snyder's work. Their idea of the Justice League probably involved making it more family-friendly and appealing to the young audience, thus roping in the big bucks. The eventual Justice League outcome. Changes do not always create magic. In the case of the Justice League, all the new thoughts and editing did not really help the cause. Whedon did introduce a lot of comic elements in the movie. The makers replaced the violence and dark tone of the plot to something more charming, and yet the movie lacked the magic that was expected. The fact that details from comic books and the backstories of several characters were cut did not please the fans. The production cost in the meantime shot through the roof as some scenes required extra attention. For instance, Henry Cavill's mustache was digitally removed in all the scenes that had Superman because he was working with Mission Impossible Fallout at the same time. With so many changes, the movie eventually turned out to be a messy affair. The fans trashed the content, and their disappointment showed in the miserable box office collections of Justice League. The demand for Snyder's cut. The loyalty of DC Universe fans could never be questioned, and the event of a disappointing Justice League showed their dedication and determination as well. There was a great discontent that was fueled by the previous promises by the studio that they had failed to keep. Zack Snyder's vision was extinct from the end product that was served to the fans, and no way they were going to take it sitting down. A fan named Fiona Zhang set up a website known as SnyderCut.com. It concentrated the attention of disgruntled fans from all over the world. They even organized protests where cosplayers protested protested with banners outside the Warner Brothers studios. This added fuel to the already popular #ReleaseTheSnyderCut. Previously, the fans had organized for a petition to demand the release of Zack Snyder's version of the movie. Their movement had gained massive support as over 180,000 signatures were obtained in a short time. If you thought the results were immediate, think again. The determined fans continued with their demands for 2.5 years before the studios had to lend them an ear. Zack Snyder himself was overwhelmed with the support. He inspired the protesters with images from his take on the plot that fed the hunger of the angry fans. Such was the magnitude of the protests that they even reached the iconic Times Square. Massive funds were gathered for suicide prevention, billboards were purchased to drive in their point, and eventually the Warner Brothers simply had to give in. The greatest success of the protests was when #ReleaseTheSnyderCut was the top trending topic on Twitter with over 1 million tweets. It commemorated the 2-year anniversary of the disastrous Justice League, and this was the turning point in the age-old demands. Just shows how persistence can make the impossible a reality, doesn't it? Snyder's Knightmare Plan, a detailed analysis. If you've watched Batman vs. Superman, you certainly remember the iconic Knightmare scene. The lengthy, detailed scene captured some moments that were actually the groundwork laid out by Zack Snyder to create his 5-movie plot. It was supposed to be an important role in the Justice League as well, but once he was gone, the makers conveniently omitted that part. All the while Snyder was supporting the fans demanding his version to the surface, he used to appear on his social media platform Vero and offer valuable minuscule details about his plans. During this time, he also shed light on the Knightmare scene where it was made clear that the makers strayed miles from his vision. It was evident that they had chucked out a significant portion of the characters devised by Snyder and their crucial backstories.
And they've heard it.
Invasion by Darkseid. Among the most interesting revelations of Zack Snyder's vision was the invasion of the Earth by Darkseid. In the movie Batman vs. Superman, you can see the Omega symbols burning in the desert, and that's a hint of more to come. Remember the story scene that Wonder Woman tells Bruce in Justice League, where we see Steppenwolf being the leader of the invasion? In Zack Snyder's version, this is where we see Darkseid for the first time, and he was called Uxas. Steppenwolf was always a pawn. He was never in the main light as we got in the final version of Justice League. It is astounding to imagine how the plot would have linked up with the Knightmare timeline and show that Darkseid led the invasion twice, with the second one being more devastating. Snyder even envisioned a fight scene involving Ares and Darkseid, following which the forces of Apocalypse would be routed. Quite a blow, isn't it, to realize just how much we missed out on? The dark side of Superman and Batman's fate. Hold on, there's more. Superman's dark side was never properly explored, but Snyder had planned for a whole new theme where Superman embraced the anti-life theory of Darkseid. Remember Superman telling Batman, "She was my world and you took her from me"? Supes here refers to Lois Lane, who was killed by Darkseid in the Batcave as per Snyder's version. This event pushed Superman over the line. The makers were hesitant to include this as they feared the formula would not work after the mixed reviews of Batman vs. Superman. If you observed closely, you would have probably noticed that there was a line in the movie where Superman tells Lois, "You are my world." Do the math in your head to see how the two lines add up for the most entertaining showdown that could have been. Snyder has actually hinted at the event where Batman sacrifices his own life to save Lois. In one of his conversations with a fan on Vero, Zack Snyder dropped a small clue on how Batman would be killed by the Darkseid's Omega Beam, and you would see Superman holding the dead body of Batman, just like the Death of Batman art in Grant Morrison's Final Crisis story in comic books. Thanks to the social media activities of the director, we have a decent idea as to the fate of our beloved superhero. However, we think this would be changed now, as a lot of content from Zack Snyder's stories post-Justice League have been leaked or hinted by the makers. Fate of other members of Justice League. We've discussed the death of Lois and Superman succumbing to the dark forces. In between, Justice League is in the doldrums. The fact that Wonder Woman and Aquaman are absent probably indicates their death. There's a question mark over the role of Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter, whose human form is General Swanwick. Snyder has hinted that the last line of defense for the Justice League is comprised of Cyborg and the Flash. Although it is heavily debatable, the characters of Martian Manhunter and Green Lantern also probably met their deaths following the first invasion by Darkseid. All we know is that Batman would be leading the charge against Apocalypse. You probably have a recollection of the parademon army of Darkseid as was shown in the Knightmare. The same sequence also has a moment where Batman is taking on some human adversaries that have Superman patches on their uniforms. This event points to the obvious. Humans were being turned into parademons, with a few retaining their human form to infiltrate through the ranks of the resisting humans. We shudder at the mere thought of it.
God, I hope this is East.
Time travel and Flash. There's an element of time travel as well in the mix of things. Snyder harbored plans to show a cosmic treadmill devised by Batman for Flash. This would allow him to send Flash back in time so that he can warn his past self about the upcoming invasion. The journey of Barry as he goes back in time is the key to some major revelations. Scenes such as where Barry tells Bruce, "You've always been right about him, fear him," are glimpses into the masterful plan of Zack Snyder. The director has also elaborated on the plans of Batman while he was sending the Flash back in time. The idea was to send him back to a time close to Lois's death. The theory of time travel as handled by Snyder stresses the importance of the Earth to be in almost the same position in the universe as that of the intended destination. If this is ignored, chances are that things could go horribly wrong, and Flash could end up in the wrong location or even in a never-ending loop. The calculations for this critical time travel were handled by Cyborg, and Bruce gets the chance to see the initial warning by Barry when he says, "Too soon." Now sit back for once and imagine the scenario. Flash would have appeared after the defeat of the Justice League at the hands of Steppenwolf. This would have been a new chance to taste victory as the reinforcement through Flash would come back in time. It is indeed a pity that this part involving time travel was never considered by the makers.
Booyah.
Conclusion. The fans are eagerly awaiting the Snyder's Cut, which, as we said, would be released next year on HBO Max. The brief trailer teaser is out now, and from the looks of it, fans are putting their money on a successful retrieval of the movie. The brief 30-second clipping that has been released is enough to let you know that Zack Snyder is back with his signature tone and his unique brand of work. As the waiting game picks up steam, we can't wait to find out just how awesome the Snyder's Cut is going to be. Let us know in the comments section. What do you think about the future of the DC cinematic universe if Zack Snyder's Justice League does go beyond expectations on HBO Max? And if you liked our content, don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.